Hi, and welcome back to Carl and Rick Took Risk. Rick, how are you this week?
Yo, awesome. I've had having some dental work done, so if I sound a bit like Daffy Duck, please excuse my speech today.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I was telling Rick earlier, my son beat me up, so we're both in the wars a little bit. Um, well, Rick, Formula One is over for the year. We've got to find something to do with our, plentiful free time. It'll be all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, right, you idiot. Talk to me about free time when I can't move in my office because it's stuffed with exams I have to mark.
Yeah, that's yeah. But we connected over an author we really enjoy this week that we hadn't really spoken about before. A guy named David Foster Wallace. And it was kind of interesting. You watched a bunch of videos. You sent me a few, and it was kind of fun to relive our experience of this author who's very philosophical and interesting and no longer with us. So I wanted to relay probably his most famous story. It's probably not even original to him, but he told it in a commencement speech, and then we could sort of riff from there. The story goes like this. It's called "This Is Water." Um, an older fish swims by two young fish, and as he goes past, he says, "Hi there, boys. How's the water?" And the two younger fish keep on swimming for a while, and then they turn to each other and they say, "What the heck is water?" Um, so, Rick, did I miss anything there?
Yeah, well, you misquoted the punchline. It's what the hell is water? But anyhow, uh,
I
you're
censored
much more
myself.
polite than I am. Uh, you know, this is Water, his speech at Kenyon College, his commencement speech at Kenyon College. That's been replicated many, many, many times. I actually used to there was a short little film made about it, a condensed version of his commencement speech that I actually used to have as a mandatory piece in my risk management course because I thought that there are just so many lessons in this uh, edited version of his commencement address that dealt with risk management. So it was a part of my course for like eight, 8 to 10 years, and it always generated a ton of class discussion. Now, again, uh, DFW, David Foster Wallace, never, ever, ever meant for it to be a risk management piece. He meant for it as a traditional college commencement address, woohoo, go out there, take over the world. Although it's anything but that. But having said that, it was extremely useful for uh, risk management, I thought. Anyhow,
Mm,
so um, I've been a big fan of DFW's essays for a long time. I have to admit, I've tried several times to get through Infinite Jest. I will fully admit I've never, ever, ever, ever made it. Uh, Someday I might, but anyhow.
yeah,
Yeah, so we probably should put a link to This Is Water in the background. But
yeah,
what do you
we
get
will.
out of This Is Water?
Well, he tells a lot of stories. He's a good storyteller. It's very succinct. He
Oh,
doesn't.
succinctity is not in most of his work, but
Well,
anyhow,
okay. His short, at least in the commencement speech,
yeah.
he likes to give short, illustrative stories that um, are not black and white. You can take a lot of different things out of them. And as we were preparing for this call, we took completely different things out of them, as always, Rick. Um, but one of the other stories I really enjoyed, he's explaining to everybody in the crowd that they're going to graduate and they're going to go on to their white collar jobs and with their advanced degrees and have these careers and everything. And he talks about the things nobody's told them yet, how they're going to get to the end of the workday and they're going to head home, and the fridge is going to be empty. And then they're going to go out, and the roads are going to be full. There's going to be traffic and honking. When they get to the grocery store, it's going to be full. Everybody's doing groceries, and they're going to feel stressed out and bored out of their mind. And they're going to want to take it out on other people, right? Because they are the center of the universe. And he basically shows two visions of this. You know, you could be frustrated and angry and disgruntled, and why do I have to put up with this? Or you can forget you're the center of the universe, look around, and see in the mundane details something beautiful, something unusual. Observe people, take yourself out of it a little bit. Um, uh, the thing I took out of that is there's something important to boredom. I think it's one of the feelings people in those situations have, that they're bored. And what do these days? They turn to a phone, they turn to news, they turn to something else. And boredom is not a symptom that needs to be immediately medicated. It's the step that comes before creativity. It's the step that it's your mind exploring something different and unusual, and it's interesting to see where your mind goes in those situations. It's one of the things I think he was trying to get at there. That um, you should not immediately try to escape the situation you're in. You should appreciate it differently. You should be aware of certain things that maybe you're not fully aware of in that moment. What did you take out of it?
Well, first off, I sure as heck did not take that out of it. And I was in a faculty meeting yesterday where I was so bored so obnoxiously bored that um, I definitely needed hallucinogenic drugs or something, which, by the way, I've never, ever, ever taken. But
Yeah.
I will tell you that no creativity came out of that boredom. Um, anything but. I took out of it uh, uh, the principles of empathy and sociological imagination. So you are not the center of the universe. The universe does not exist for you. Um, and so the boredom aspect, yes, that's part of what plays into it, but it's having the empathy for those around you, having the sociological imagination for society around you, and realizing that you're not the center of the universe. And I think that in all of our roles, regardless if you're in risk management, marketing, finance, whatever, we tend to think that our task is the center of the universe. But the bigger thing is we tend to think that other people have our contexts, that other people have our understandings, that other people have our knowledge base. But also, what we miss, and this I'm going beyond what he says, is we don't have the context as risk managers. We don't have the context of other people.
Mm.
We don't have the knowledge base of other people. We don't have the goals and objectives of other people.
Mm.
And until we start to appreciate the two sides of that lack of understanding or lack of context, we're always going to be poor at risk management design. And um, again, I'll beat a dead horse. Risk is about people.
Mm.
And risk is not only about people as individuals, it's risk is about people as a sociological group. And I think that what the short little documentary This Is Water is about understanding that you are a fish in a sea of context, i.e., water, and you don't understand that you're in water. That's why the two younger fish say, "What the hell is water?" They don't understand that they exist in a context,
Mm.
and if you don't understand that you exist in a context, that everyone else exists in a context, and everyone has a different view of that context, you are literally missing the ocean for your puddle of water.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the classical problem for risk managers, right? That they heave their policies and frameworks and tools on the business, but don't really understand what the business is trying to do, how it generates money, how it operates, that it's afraid of risk management and the regulator getting in the way. And then risk managers come in and, yeah, hammer a square nail into a square peg into a round hole.
But they also don't understand it going the other way either. They assume that
Yeah,
everyone understands why the risk manager is doing what they're doing
yeah,
or trying to implement what they're implementing. And we've talked many times before about the importance of communication in risk management, but it's very hard to communicate when you don't have an understanding of both your context, your communicating party counterparty's context, and also your communicating counterparty's context understanding of your context. Boy, that was one hell of a convoluted sentence. But
it's worthy of DFW.
yeah, no, I'm highly confident he would have worded that much better. But the point is you have to understand basically those three contexts. You have to understand your context, you have to understand the counterparty's context, and you have to understand the counterparty's understanding of your context. And those are three very different
Yeah,
pools of water.
yeah,
And as a risk manager, that's very, very, very hard to do.
mm,
Uh, but I would like to think that for a good risk manager, i.e., the wise old fish, that it's also something that once you understand it, you realize the importance of it and you put in the time, energy, and effort and thought necessary. And what it does is it massively improves risk implementation of risk management.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a bit like the carpenter measuring twice before he starts his work, right? Because if you don't do that and you just jump into something, you have to pick up the pieces afterwards. Everything is a mess, and you're not gonna get where you want to go. You're gonna frustrate a lot of people along the way, and it's not gonna work well. But if up front, if you put that work in and you understand the three contexts you're talking about, things can go fairly smoothly. I mean, you really can do something that adds some risk, some value to the business, right? And adds a new perspective to what they do. Um, yeah, we know what happens. Um, but yeah, coming in there and saying the regulator wants it or this is the way it's got to be. I mean, that's not a conversation starter. Yeah.
Yeah. Ironically, I would argue that those are better conversation starters than uh, the usual one quarter sell in which you throw a bunch of jargon and you think that you give a brilliant explanation for why this is needed, when in reality, no one understood half of the jargon that you're using,
Yes.
or you made a whole bunch of assumptions of their knowledge of facts that are second nature to you as a risk manager. I
Yeah.
think actually it's far better just go in and say this is the way it is by fiat than
Yeah.
go in, think that you gave a great sales presentation when in reality all you did was uh, either bore people or confuse people or insult people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having said that, neither way, of course, is ideal.
Yeah. Rick, it makes me think of mentorship programs, which workplaces really struggle with. Um, but in the past, I have been paired up with people on the business side of things as kind of mentors. to get outside of my own bubble and understand what they're thinking about, what they're worried about, before you have a conversation about risk programs and rollouts and all that stuff, right? It's a very more informal social setting where you're kind of getting to know each other, but you're starting to understand the business. I mean, what do you think of the value of that?
Uh, I'm going to flip it around. First off, um, mentorships, forced mentorships, I think are almost always a recipe for something less than ideal. I'll
Yeah.
leave it at that. Um, I can tell you that in my own career, I desperately could have utilized a mentor, but the mentorships have to develop organically. So that's on me. Having said that, once I got to a certain level, where I learned to value mentorship is when I had the power to bring people into my group that were much more senior than me.
Right.
And so, they're the ones who knew where all the bodies were. They're the ones that knew how all the bodies got murdered. They're the ones that knew uh, how people thrived.
Mm.
And it was kind of game changing for me to realize, holy smokes, if I bring in these more senior people,
Mm.
uh, and that was a little bit of a luxury being a young brat who got probably promoted way too fast, but being a young brat and having the power to say, I want that person or I want that person. Uh, my very first experience, I got a guy by the name of, I'll leave him out of this, but DP. So if he happens to be listening, he's long since retired, I suspect. And last thing he wants to do is hear something from me. But I learned very quickly that DP was an incredible mentor, an incredible sounding board.
Mm.
And my one regret is he has no idea of the value that he added to my career. Now, was he a mentor in the traditional sense of the word? No, he
Yeah.
was, one of my subordinates, which one would think the relationship is supposed to go the opposite way.
Yeah.
And, I'd like to think that, maybe I mentored him in a way or two as well, because, after I left, he got several promotions. So you know, anyhow, uh, but then when I moved on to another job, the first thing I did was I went headhunting for internally. I went headhunting internally when I joined a new organization for a couple more senior people.
Mm.
And again, KC, if you're listening, uh, he was absolutely invaluable to me. I also suspect that I was personally responsible for uh, aspirin sales in the UK going up because I caused so many headaches for him. But anyhow, again, KC was invaluable for me. So I think mentorships help us get outside of ourselves, as DFW encourages us to do, and this is
Mm.
water, but it has to happen organically.
Yeah.
And forced mentorships are are weird.
Yeah.
Are I think ineffectual. One of the things that we have to do is we have to learn to get out of ourselves and to mentor ourselves. Uh, this is having cognitive diversity, and again, this is part of my strategy of always going into a bookstore. Going into a bookstore to buy the last book in the bookstore that I think I would be interested in. And doing that with biographies, I think, is a fascinating way, you know,
Mm.
to build your cognitive diversity of understanding people. Because if you get a biography of the person that you think that you'd be least interested in, that's probably the biography that you're going to develop the most from reading.
Yeah. No, I makes
Hey, I've
sense.
gone on way too long there, but anyhow, sorry for
No,
all the
no, no.
drivel
I,
listeners.
I didn't have anything to disagree with. But yeah, I was thinking, I've mentored a few students early in their careers from when I was living in Vancouver, and I think it's a hard leap to make because a lot of them are so focused on what kind of job, what kind of, I need the ideal first job. I need that, and these are all the programming languages I know, and these are all the skills I can contribute. And you can't shake them out of it completely, but you really want to say, no, find a manager, find somebody you can work well with, somebody that's interesting that you can learn from. And I think, as you're saying, I remember all those people in my life, whether they were at my level or above or somewhere outside of the risk management department, who kind of informally said, hey, you want to go on a run and chat about life, but also work occasionally. Those are good relationships that I still have to this day, and they make work so much more pleasurable and interesting. So anyway, I think I don't have anything more to say about DFW. I will post This Is Water and maybe also the commencement speech. I think that might be interesting for people. It's a good listen. He can really um, you can end up thinking about this for a week afterwards easily. He has some pretty deep ideas. So perfect, Rick. Until next time. Cheers, everybody.
Have fun, everyone.